Hello and welcome back to Hardspace Shipbreaker, brought to you by Commando Gaming and Strategic Gaming, and also brought to you live on twitch.tv at Commando Gaming 1. We're going to do some gameplay here, but more importantly, we're going to kind of start from scratch with our Deal Breaker campaign. And one of the biggest frustrations that we have with this game right now is the fact that the tutorial is not the most useful. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to do the first couple days of gameplay, but we're going to try to give you some step-by-step practical information that should be in the tutorial that isn't, that will help everybody be much more productive with their first couple games, and they'll avoid a lot of frustration, because this game can be very frustrating because really simple things are not explained in the game. So let's jump into it. We're going to start our campaign from scratch, and we're going to do a step-by-step tutorial of the first couple days. So we're just going through the opening scenes here. Please read them. They're pretty critical to understanding the game. In addition, I should mention Alex of Commando Gaming is also here, and he's going to be providing some commentary and feedback since he's also played some of this game as well.
Yeah, like an hour.
So if you're watching this on twitch.tv at Commando Gaming 1, please feel free to post any questions or commentary, and hopefully we'll answer those while we continue to do a tutorial for you. So basically, this game is set in the year 2329. As you can see, there's bad stuff going on. There's food shortages, contamination. You can also see that our player character
is a billion in debt.
Is really in debt. He's got past due bills. His father's sick. Another past due bill. So basically everything's happened to him except someone kicking his dog. So he's applied for a new job as a shipbreaker. And let's click on the update.
Where'd you see that?
All the information there. Oh. Alright, so basically You could pause this at your leisure, but basically it's saying out of 24.8 million applicants, you were chosen to be a shipbreaker. All right, so we're going to put in our name. We'll put in our twitch.tv channel. And right now you have a revival package of unlimited clones. Now the thought behind this is if you die on the job, you'll be provided additional clones that will take your place. So basically your consciousness will be put into a new body and you can continue working. Note that it costs you $150,000 to get a clone made for yourself. Actually, pretty realistic cost of a clone, I would say. Alright, so to verify your identity, we should say this is an early access game. So for example, I think at some point in the full version of the game, they're going to ask you to talk, so your voice will be in the game, which is pretty cool. And for meal preferences, you can select chicken, plastic-free, vegetarian, or animatarian. And I'm assuming in the final version of the game,
this will actually matter.
There'll be a description, or maybe it costs more to have chicken or something like that. So we're just going to select chicken. And there's a number of things you have to read and click off here. They're kind of funny if you want to pause and watch the video and read them, but we're going to skip through since this is a tutorial. Okay, so we basically sign our lives away as part of our employment terms and conditions, and we click to put our thumbnail on the contract. And this is how the game really begins, and this is how we get our first cutscene. Alright, so this is a pretty good descriptive scene right here of what you're actually going to be doing in the game. So pay close attention to this. This is kind of how I figured out a lot of the stuff that they didn't really tell you in the tutorial. That scene was actually a better tutorial than the tutorial they give you in the game.
Yeah, I was actually about to say, I wouldn't really call what they told you a tutorial. More like not very effective tips.
Now keep in mind again, this is an early access game, so they'll probably take some of the feedback from users and try to beef up the tutorial or training section of the game. So let's jump into that right now. All right, so we're going to open our work order by hitting Tab. Okay, and then we get a number of tasks that we're supposed to do to basically tell us how to control ourselves. So we're going to move forward for 38.
30 seconds. It says 3S.
We're going to move backward for 38 seconds. Stop ourselves. And we're
Shift.
going to
Shift also brings you down.
descend.
Shift works.
Oh, sure enough, Shift does work to descend. We're going to have to go where we can descend.
Actually, it doesn't matter. It still counts. As long as you use the descend key.
Okay, so let's descend here. And then we're going to ascend, which is the space key. Just to be clear, the space key is ascend. Some people had some problems with that. Right, so we're going to break, which we've done. All right, so then we need to roll. Very useful when you're doing work in the yard.
It can make you very disoriented, though.
Yeah, getting disoriented in this game, just like space, is one of the biggest things to worry about.
Also, the fact that you are eventually going to have limited oxygen.
No spoilers.
I thought you've gotten to that part already.
So next up, we need to start our operations. So we're going to use our grapple to detach an antenna. Now, grapple is used to connect to an item and to move it. So we're going to get close enough to the antenna here. Break. Lock on to the antenna. Pull it down, and then you actually want to point it towards the barge here. And then you hit the F key, which gives a little push of air into the salvage barge. Going to do the same thing. And F. They could be more clear about where you're supposed to put certain parts of the ship. You kind of have to figure that out as you go along. Or you can watch our handy tutorial. Right, so he's talking about the yellow areas. All right, so we're going to toggle our cutter, which is the number 2 button. Again, they're very unclear about giving you that sort of information. Then we're going to move closer. Now, when you get within 10 meters of an object, see how it highlights barge there? That indicates where that resource should be placed.
Yeah, it took a while for me to learn that, actually.
So we're going to go ahead and get a little closer until the weld point is highlighted. Right, now that nacelle is free. So now we kind of just go above it. And select our grappler. And we could just give it a little push with the F key. And that will eventually push it down to the barge. The biggest thing you need to learn in this game is that everything is dictated by mass. So once you get the mass moving in the right direction, it'll continue to go in that direction till it hits another object.
Okay. That's very good to know.
So
if something with a greater mass hits something with a less of a mass, the item with the less mass will move more when it gets hit than...
Absolutely.
So it will, rather than stop the moving object, it will start moving because the moving object already has much more mass.
All right, so it looks like our object didn't have sufficient mass, so let's go to complete the travel down to the barge. So let's go ahead and push it again.
I just like to rapidly press the F key to push it.
All right. All right, so as you can see, we successfully salvaged that. All right, so now we need to actually go to the second nacelle and do the same thing. Again, we're going to take out our stinger. Make sure we're close enough. We're going to dissolve that connection to the ship, knocking it free.
Now I don't understand, because it's firing a laser, but with the laser it would just cut through, but it dissolves like you just said. So what is it doing? Is it dissolving it, or is it melting it?
It's melting it. That's how I would describe it. So we're going to give that another push. And we can kind of follow behind if you wish to just kind of push it along a little faster. Now when you're doing a regular destruction of an entire ship, you won't waste your time doing that, because time is money, literally, in this game.
Yeah, because of the oxygen.
Okay. View certification quota. Alright, certification. Work order objectives, complete 16 of 16. So we get our initial certification.
Now you already know how to salvage the rest, so you can technically salvage it right now.
That's true. Alright. So basically we're being told to end our day of work, but since I know
like I just said
what to do, as Alex just said, we can actually just do some further deconstruction of this ship here and earn some extra money. So you're going to melt through all the areas that are indicated as yellow. Now it gets a little tougher here because we actually don't have the cutter.
Or the tethers. But actually, I just came up with an idea.
So we're not going to be able to actually break the ship apart any further.
Actually, I had an idea. Wait, you took off those wings, so now if you pull out the tether...
We don't have a tether yet.
Or the grapple tool.
Yeah. I don't think the grapple is going to allow us to haul something this big.
No, it does, because usually you do that before you actually get the tether. You get the tether on the medium ship. You don't have it for this one.
It's too heavy.
No? It's
Nope.
not. You just turn too fast.
Actually, yeah. So we can actually...
Now...
If we get creative...
Actually, technically you can use the cutter because you can actually push harder than you can pull with the grapple. So if you actually maneuver yourself correctly, you can...
If we're patient, we can
push the
actually
whole thing.
use our basic grapple. But the problem is we're working against the mass of the object.
Wait, do you die if you go into the processor?
Let's not find out. I know if you go into the furnace, it's not good.
You've done it on accident before? Or, instead of saying on accident, should I just say it was a scientific experiment?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Right, so as you can see, it's basically being sucked in. Alright, so we're actually going to get credit for that deconstruction. Now this is kind of secondary to the steps in the game, but we can actually do a little extra credit here. And try to get this to go into the processor. Even though we don't have tethers, which we'll see later on, which is what you typically use to move these heavier objects, we could still use some other tools.
You can also push up against it with your thrusters.
That's a good tip.
Like when I was actually learning how to play yesterday, we after I took out a part of the ship, I had to get out to push it, and I ended up pushing pieces with my body.
Alright, so we did a little extra credit there. Now we can't break into the rest of the ship until we get some additional tools. So let's go to the hab.
Actually, if you really want to, if you actually really try, you can just push the whole thing. But that's not a good idea because some of it goes into the smelter, some goes into the processor.
We'll save that for when we get the right tools. But this will make the next step a little easier. So we're going to end our shift, and that's effectively day 1 of Shipbreaker. Okay, let's continue. We got our Class 1 certification. As you can see, we've earned 271,000 credits, and we only owe slightly less than $1 billion in debt. So, yeah, hopefully we're going to start working on bigger ships. So let's complete our shift. Right, so we get our split saw, which is a much upgraded version of the Stinger.
Much upgraded.
It does require more resources, so you have to keep that in mind.
But then again, that doesn't really matter for the tutorial.
We're going to start our shift. Alright, so we're going to continue salvage. Yes? Alright, so one of the things that takes everybody a really long time because the tutorial doesn't really explain it is how do you use the new split saw that you just acquired.
Wait, it does.
It's real simple. You just hit 2 a second time. So you hit 2 once to equip the cutter, and then you hit 2 again to get the split saw.
It does explain it though.
It's not very clear.
It says right there on the screen, 2 to swap cutter head.
It's a lot of people have had problems with it.
That's weird.
So this is what our split saw does. So our split saw is substantially more effective at cutting through certain materials that you couldn't get through with the Stinger.
So just kind of line yourself up.
So you line yourself up,
top,
and as you can see, it will cut through a large section very quickly.
Now you go down And
So
then
you
you
go
do
down.
the same thing.
We do the same thing. We
And then
rotate.
you go, rotate it, yes. Cut that.
Do the
I'll
same
stop
thing.
moving backward.
Do
When
it
you that,
again.
then that entire space is available to salvage.
Okay, this goes into the furnace.
And watch out to not oh no, there it goes.
I got it. It's fine. It's a small piece. And then use our F to kick it into the goal, so to speak.
Press F to pay respects.
Alright. And now we can get into the inside of the ship here. And there's certain things we need to put onto the barge. As you can see, the item rotates through space, so you kind of have to adjust for that. We got another item, two items that need to go onto the barge. Easy peasy. Alright, so now we just go inside and we can actually take out these items. Now you could use the split saw for these items, but eventually you're going to have to pay for the fuel. So I recommend just using your stinger for smaller cuts.
Only use the stinger if you're cutting, like as you saw before, cutting off big chunks. But if you're just cutting these little braces, then just use the stinger.
Right. So now this ship theoretically should be easy to just pull apart with our grapple. Okay, this goes to the processor. Like so. Are we going to hit the corner? Yep. Once it gets in the gravity well of the processor, you can just leave it alone. You don't have to micromanage it, which is good because, as we said, time is money. Alright, so was that the last valuable component? Oh no. One more. So we're going to pull this off. And oh, not to the furnace. Not to the furnace. Okay. Now all we have left, I believe, is the skeleton, unless there's one more piece. Nope. All we have to do now is process aluminum.
Aluminium. I don't know why it's pronounced like that for some people.
So we're going to have to cut this up a bit because we don't have tethers yet, which you'll see in the next stage, which allow us to move heavy objects. So we're just going to have to cut this up into much smaller parts. Well, actually, we might be able to do the whole thing. Let's see.
Yeah, I was able to salvage the whole thing when I was playing.
Takes a little bit of time, but it's probably easier.
And again, we have unlimited time on this.
what we basically need to do is just push it out into the gravity well of the furnace. Let's get out of here a little bit. Alright, so one trick you could do is you can actually use your own velocity. So if you go past at high speed, you're going to actually push it where you want it to go.
It didn't work that time.
Didn't work that time.
So make sure all the other parts are supposed to go into the furnace. You don't want to.
They are.
You don't want to have penalty.
So we're just going to cut it apart.
Actually, if you just cut the support bars and cut it into 2 halves.
Yep, that's something we'll do next. Into the furnace. Alright, as Alex said, one of the things you can do is use the split saw.
Just cut the support beams there, and you'll be able to basically take it in 2 trips.
Now you always want to keep in mind that there's going to be furnaces on both sides.
So you always want to go to the closest.
So you just use the most efficient side. Alright. Alright, so now, theoretically, we should have 2 parts that we can tear apart, as you can see. Which makes it much more manageable. Let's try pushing the first one towards the one furnace. Then we'll go back to the other one. And do the same. And have to use our tether to get it on the right trajectory.
Trajectory, big word. You sure you know what it means?
I do. So one thing you're going to find in this game is they're always trying to get you to spend money on gear, because of course that keeps you working for them longer. So you have to make smart choices with what you spend. So just a note for later. There we go. And as you can see, we have completely salvaged the entire vehicle.
Which in turn will give you a lot of cash.
There's a couple remnants out here, but it's really not worth collecting those, so we're just going to push forward. But probably easily 95% of that ship was recovered.
Yeah, that's better than like 35.
The other factor you have to keep in mind is once we're done with our training, you're going to be paying for your materials and oxygen. So you want to work efficiently, and
smart.
Sometimes you want to give up a little bit of recycling to avoid spending money on air or materials.
You don't want to waste time salvaging something that will end up not paying for the stuff that you paid to stay out there.
Okay, as you can see, we salvaged the vast majority here to get almost 100,000 in payment. Keep in mind, most of the ship we recycled on the first day.
But there was some stuff that was destroyed. This is where you get the tethers.
We've got our tether module, so we're going to purchase that upgrade. see if there's any other upgrades available. Nope, not right now. Because we're still in the tutorial. So we'll start our shift. We have to view ship catalogs. We have to select a new ship for us to salvage. So we'll begin salvage. So this kind of highlights one of the most important things they need to train you on in the tutorial, and they do a very bad job, is the use of the tether, which makes things so much easier, but they don't really describe what to do in the tutorial at all.
Especially for these bigger ships.
Okay, so as mentioned, the tethers allow you to move heavier objects. So the first thing let's do, let's get rid of this weld point on this nacelle. Okay, this one does not want to break. I'm trying not to overheat. There we go. You do have to watch the heat of your stinger. It is something that can definitely cause you harm. Alright, so now we've unhooked this tether, but this nacelle, but it's a dual nacelle, so it's too heavy, as you'll see, for our tether to really move, our grapple to move, right? So what we can do is we can use our tethers, which are part of the grappling tool. You hit V, or actually you right click to set the tether, and then while you're holding down your right click, point the tether where you want the item to go. It's unlimited as far as how far it will go. As you can see, when it's under strain, it will turn red, and it can break if you put too much into one object. As you can see, the tether, using the mass of the barge, will now pull the nacelles down. It's super easy once you understand how to do it. It's just that the tutorial doesn't really give you a clear description.
Like I said earlier, I wouldn't really call it a tutorial. I feel like the loading screen tips would be better.
Okay, so before we do the next step in their tutorial, we might as well just do another practice with our tether. So we'll take off the second nacelle here. We're gonna equip our grappler.
Why don't they just call them engines?
And we're gonna send the second tether down. Now let me show you something. If we put another tether on and do the same thing, it will travel twice as fast because there's twice as much pull on the nacelle. All right. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is activate our scanner, which is the T button. And it gives you an outlook at the interior of the ship using a scan. Pretty straightforward. Next up,
now if you actually want to, say like a glitch happens and like the airlock is unusable, what would you do, Dad? What would be the first thing you'd do to get inside?
I'd probably find a less dangerous part. Now, if you move along the hull, you can actually see with the scanner where it says danger. See where it says danger there?
Yeah, that's where it's...
You would not want to cut into that because it will cause an explosion. But there are parts of the hull that won't have that danger notification if there isn't an airlock available.
Now if there isn't an airlock available for this ship specifically, or it's not letting you do it, I had a glitch where it wouldn't let me interact when I first tried. So I went around back and cut in through the engine. For the engine compartment, there's a lot less air to escape, so it's a much safer. In the 2 times that I did it, I didn't have a single explosion.
Alright, so let's follow through. We'll activate the airlock here. It will let us into the ship. And then what it needs to do is it needs to equalize, so you have to activate the airlock inside of the ship. And now we can go into the ship. Alright, so we're inside the ship here. Alright, so we're going to go to this device here, which is the atmospheric regulator, that basically slowly decompresses the pressure in the ship. Alright. Alright, so as we can see here, this is the nuclear reactor, which is the next part of our salvage operation. But we don't have to necessarily do that right away. So one of the things I like to do when I'm breaking a ship down is start from the inside and quite simply just taking out the welding points in an efficient and quick way. And that's what you want to do because the clock is ticking outside of the tutorial, so you want to learn how to do this quickly.
Eventually, once you're done with like your 3rd ship like this, you'll be a pro. You'll know exactly where to cut, exactly where to put everything, so you won't need to waste time.
As you can see, we're trying to take out those welds quickly and efficiently. One thing you can actually do, it's a tough maneuver, but try to slowly go through the ship and just use the stinger as you float by. It's definitely something good to practice. By the way, if you're watching us in our stream on twitch.tv at Commando Gaming 1, please feel free to put any questions you might have. As you can see, we're starting to take the ship apart now. It's literally falling apart as we take out the structural components that are holding the ship together. And the reason we're doing it that way instead of just trying to take the reactor out is because you want an easy path from the reactor to the barge. So as you can see, the ship is slowly, by centrifugal force, falling apart as we take out the welds. Alright, so now as you can see, the part with the reactor is going out, but we don't want to mess with it yet because we're going to finish these welds here. As long as we don't touch it and remove it, it will be fine. Okay, so we're just going to let the reactor kind of start to float off into space. One thing we can do is we can switch to our other tool here and just kind of start pushing stuff out a little bit. We want to stop it though, we don't want it to go off. Just trying to clear away. We want to clear easy access to where we want to put stuff. So this goes into the processor. So let's just push that into the processor. Like so. Alright. So now let's go over. Let's find the part that has the reactor on it. Now I'm going to give everybody a little tip. Now you can, one of the biggest threats you have with reactors is that they'll blow up on you. So one thing you can do, if you're willing to give up a little of this salvage, if you actually just take the part that's connected to the reactor completely together as a component, it won't start counting down because it sees it as actually one part. It's only if you remove the reactor from this component that the clock starts ticking on a bomb. So we can actually do this in a fun way. So let's actually shoot a tether. Shoot it over there. It's going to pull the bomb forward. And then you can push N to get rid of the tether. Shoot another tether and push it down to the barge. As you can see, the reactor gets recovered and you don't have to worry about it blowing up on you because you're far enough away from the reactor.
Then you just put that into the processor.
And we just put this into the processor, and then you get both parts without risking that blowing up because it blows up very often, the reactor, as soon as you start touching it. So you don't want to actually come in contact.
Yeah, first time I saw it, I actually thought it was something I had to cut.
Yeah, that didn't go well.
No, Dad was actually sitting in another room watching TV while I was playing, and I just came out of the room 5 minutes after he came to check on me, see if I knew how to play because the tutorial was bad, and I just said, "You didn't know you could. You didn't tell me I could die."
Yes.
I literally said that to him.
You can definitely die in this game, so we're actually going to start working on taking the rest of the ship apart here. One piece at a time. See, that tether broke because this is a very heavy piece of the ship, so we might just use 2 tethers here. Maybe even 3 tethers just to make sure. And then we're going to eliminate the tethers once it's going in the right direction. You can try to give it, looks like we're going to have to do 1 more tether. This is a heavy part of the ship, so sometimes heavier parts of the ship will take multiple parts of the tether. Alright, so what do you need to do next with this ship? We're not done.
Not even close.
Not even close, because we need to do some more destruction of the items that are holding the ship together. So let's do that next. So what you need to do is you need to go into this subsection of the hull here, and guess what we're going to find? That's right, more welding points. You can see them in the scanner if you look for this in the scanner as well. So we're going to take out our trusty stinger, start taking these apart. If you're watching us on our stream, thank you for joining us. Please put some questions or commentary in the chat room. That would help us out a lot. We'd like to make this an interactive experience for you. We're basically just doing a tutorial on some of the items in Shipbreaker. They should kind of tell you while they're giving you the training. They don't do a good job of giving you clear training.
But then again, this is in very early access.
Now, it does make the game challenging because it does take you a while to figure stuff out.
Actually, what I learned when I'm doing this, if you go to just the correct distance and you pull out the cutter, it will be able to cut multiple at once.
Yes, that is true. Alright, so as you can see, we've taken out, if I'm not mistaken, all the welds here.
Yes.
Confirm with that with me, Alex.
Yeah, that's all.
Alright, so now
you just tether them together.
this is where it gets fun. This really shows you the efficiency of the tether, which you're going to want to use going forward. So what we do is we just hook up a tether here to the first section, send it off to be recycled, to the second section, hook it up to the first section.
Broke.
It broke. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But what you can do is you can actually set this up as a train. And you're going to efficiently...
the first tether broke.
Doesn't always work.
No, it's because the item that was attached to that first tether was recycled.
It all depends on the size of the object. But as you can see here, we're kind of using the earlier objects to pull the later objects in for recycling. Very efficient. Sometimes the heavier parts need additional tethers. Sometimes the tethers break. It's not an exact science. Let's actually pull off that antenna because we can actually send that to the barge for a little extra money. As you can see, we're trying to get the items to pull themselves. It's a very efficient way. If you can set it up and then you can just kind of leave them to go into the collector themselves. using their own pull and gravity. Alright, and we still have another section, so we got to dive in there and do the same thing. So I'm actually going to show you the technique that Alex mentioned. When you have multiple welding locations together, you can use one cut. Oh, I didn't do it right. To take out two.
Actually, when I tried it, I managed to take out 5.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Alright, that was a item that was still a little pressurized. I'm not sure why.
You cut into the airlock.
Oh, that's right. There is the airlock. But it worked out fine. Whenever you get that notification, just kind of back out, and if you react quickly enough, you're not going to have too much of a problem. Let's keep putting...
If anything, that actually helped you because it broke all the pieces apart.
It did. It did break all the pieces. What it actually did is it broke up the segments that we hadn't burned off yet. So it actually did help us. That is a technique. I've used it before, and I've seen other people use it before.
I wouldn't really recommend it. You have a big risk if it ends up like hitting a reactor that you missed.
Well,
because some ships have multiple reactors.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful. No question about it. Right, so as you can see, this section still has some items that need to be cut.
That cutscene kind of lied in a way, because it showed someone using that laser cutter to cut off an entire section of a ship, not just little plates, which this thing cannot do.
Well, maybe that's a upgraded cutter later on.
Maybe.
We're going to have to find that out. We're just kind of exploring this game as we go. Uh-oh, we got a piece of salvage that's actually stuck. Alright, that piece is going in. So on this piece, it's a heavier piece, so we're just going to use multiple tethers. Right, now I'm going to stop this from going into the furnace because there's actually components inside that we want to actually take out. Because they can actually go to the barge.
The seats and stuff?
Yep.
Actually, if you counter tether, should stop it in its tracks.
So let's stop this rotation, which you can do.
By just tethering it to something else. No, that's just going to pull the other thing with it.
No, it should work. It should stop the rotation, which is what I wanted to do.
I would cancel the tethers before they start pulling in. See?
That's fine.
I think that thing can just take the antenna off and then you can just put the whole thing in the processor.
That's a good point.
You don't really want to bother with the stuff that goes into the furnace unless you actually have like a quota for it.
That's true. For example, we've already been told to enter the hab, but we're just going to be eager beavers and keep working.
Never use that saying again.
Because the name of the game is to get through as many ships as possible. So tutorial or not, we might as well earn as much money as possible, especially when we don't have to worry about oxygen or purchasing supplies, which you'll see in the next section of this video. That should be all of the weld points. Alright, oh, let's clear the way here. So basically this section here, if you'll remember from our first video, it was very hard to move this around because we didn't have tethers yet.
But I taught you something. Did I?
But
what you were talking about?
Now that we have tethers, we could just send this into the furnace.
Wait, I thought that thing went into the processor.
Nope, that all goes into the furnace.
Oh, I did not know that. I thought you were talking about when I taught you to cut it in half and then just take it in pieces.
And theoretically, this little part, that part here, this could go into the barge. But it's probably not worth the time and energy. So we'll just let that recycle. I mainly did that just to clear the way. Let's do some more practice with our tethers here.
Is that a bullet?
Yeah, it's a bottle.
Looks like a bullet.
Where's the rest of our... Where is it? It is really hard to get not to get disoriented in this game.
You were about to say it's hard to get disoriented.
Hard not to get disoriented.
Yeah, like you try to get disoriented.
Where's the rest of the ship?
It's over by the other processor still, I think. No, the other one. No. Where did it float off to?
Where to go?
Probably standing on it or something.
Did it float off into space?
Did you get a notification saying that you lost a lot of precious material? Oh, there it is.
Where?
The cockpit?
Yeah.
Look, left. Right next to the processor. Right next to the processor.
Oh, there it is. It kind of blends in there. Sorry about that,
we're
everybody.
Totally not blind.
So this is actually perfectly situated, so we can...
Except for the stuff inside that goes into the barge.
Right, so we're going to pull that stuff out right now.
Actually, can you tether those two things together so that thing doesn't float off? The side panel?
What side panel? No, we don't need to do that.
Why? Because they're separated. And they both go into the furnace or the processor, mostly.
Alright, so let's take out these items here, not into the processor.
Into the barge.
Oh, lost it.
And yeet.
Go!
It's kind of cool that you get to shoot it away from you. It's kind of cool.
So each
Oh
one...
my goodness, back up.
Why?
Dude, those are arcs. You probably damaged something.
No?
It's flying in towards the thing.
Uh-oh. Alright, well, like I said, we're not going to get everything out of that ship. Let's just send it into the processor. I can live with that.
Yeah.
Alright, there we go. Our second ship. For the most part processed. Again, there's a couple pieces floating around.
We don't really bother with that.
It's really not worth the time and effort. So let's go to the hab. Alright, end of our second shift.
Dude, you got 2 mil.
2 million in sea bills.
Those aren't sea bills. This is not Battletech. This is Shipbreaker.
Everything's Battletech.
No, this is Shipbreaker.
As you can see, we got the vast majority of the things. There's a couple things.
Mostly titanium.
Mostly some scrap. But I'm happy with that haul. Now here comes the painful part, because they're going to tell you how much you have to pay. Oh wait, that's the next.
No, that's this one.
Alright.
For stupid stuff, like...
So as you can see, we have to actually pay, now that we're out of the tutorial,
Also,
for the use of the equipment, the place we live, and resurrection fees if you die, thrust rental, suit rental, oxygen, all these things are charged back to us.
Also, notice something? You see the bay transportation fees, $10,000? I figured out what that is. That's for them to transfer the ship to our bay.
Wow.
They're charging us for something that they moved.
Well, no one said it would be easier, but now that we're out of the tutorial, we
really
actually
dumb.
have the ability to actually purchase some things on our own. So for example, we can increase the heat capacity. Let's do that.
And I would get the range. Oh wait, you can't afford them. Can you afford anything for the grapple? Nope.
Max Tether's 15. That would be good to upgrade to. So as you can see, you can get upgrades for all of your equipment over time. We'll probably be doing a video about which upgrades to do in what order in the future. Alright, so let's start our next shift. Alright, we completed that ship, so we're going to view the ship catalog. Ooh, we can upgrade to different ships now. These are all kind of the same class of ship. It's just a different type of ship of the same basic structure. So let's go with the mackerel, because we already know how to do that shit. We're going to claim... We're going to claim that ship. And our game crashed. That happens sometimes, especially with an early development game. Let's see if it fixes itself or if we have to do a reset on the game. Fortunately, this game does not take long to restart. This is actually the first time I've probably played about 6 or 7 hours of this game, and this is the first time I've had any instability in the game whatsoever. So that's actually a good sign. The developers will get a little notification about the problems that we had there. And let's just quickly load the game up.
The game crashed?
Yep, the game crashed. Alright, so let's reboot the game. Luckily the game loads very quickly, as I said. Alright, should load up any second now, hopefully.
Looks like my mascot wants to do this.
There we go. Game is loading back up. Now hopefully we should be able to continue off right where we left off once we reload the game quickly. Alright, so we're going to go back to our load and we'll just continue quickly. Hopefully we'll be able to pick up right where we left off before that crash. Again, that's the first time I've had any stability issues with this game. Very solid for being an early access game. View ship catalog. Alright, so we have this transport. So let's go ahead and select that transport. Alright, now we're on to our first real day on the job. And what I mean by that is we're actually going to have to pay for resources now. All right. All right, so now that that exposition is over, let's get back on the job here. So now you're going to notice that our oxygen meter is slowly ticking down. So we only have a limited supply of oxygen before we have to go back and get more. In addition, we also run out of tethers. They're no longer unlimited. So again, we need to... Did we not cut through here? Huh. Hold on, everybody. May have just wasted a tether. Could have sworn we completely cut through. Alright, so this is a new ship. Oh, okay. So this is a new ship type for me. So we have another weld point here that we didn't have on the other ship. All right, so we're going to bust through that. Now, let's use our tethers. to collect these nacelles. Again, we can tether them together, as you can see, and they'll kind of pull each other down, because time is critical now, because we actually are in a situation where we only have so much time before we run out of oxygen. So we want to do these operations as quickly as possible now that our training wheels have been taken off. So we can do things like tether these together and then push that down together. As you can see, both ships, both of those will go down together using gravity, and we've cleared off all 4 nacelles on this ship. Now we're almost out of oxygen. So as I said, oxygen is probably one of your most critical resources. So what we have to do is go back to the area outside of our hub. And we're going to collect oxygen. We could have worked a little bit longer, but we were at a good stopping point, so I just decided to go back to collect oxygen. So when you come back to this station here, we're going to get oxygen, we're going to get fuel for the cutter, we're going to get tethers. Purchase as many tethers as you can, and then head back, because we're on the clock now. This is where you want to try to be as efficient as possible. So we got to find the airlock. Doesn't look like the airlock's on that side, so let's go to the other side. See if we can find the airlock, if there is one. There it is. There's the airlock. Okay, we're going to operate the airlock here. Again, keeping an eye on the time. Time is valuable here. All right, so we're going to do the same things we did before. Just try to do it as quickly as possible. Now this ship is mainly built the same as before. So we want to look for the same items that we used the last time to depressurize the ship. Okay. All right, so as you can see, the interior of the ship is slightly different, but the nature of the ship is still the same. So we have the same areas that we need to cut. So don't let slight differences in the ship throw you off. You're still basically, it's the same basic design. See, for example, the same weld points are still here that were on the other ship. So you just have to look for them and go through the process of eliminating them. Okay, as you can see, we've kind of pushed through one section through and out. Which now gives us access to the interior of the ship. Notice that I'm using my grapple more instead of the tethers because the grapple is free and the tethers I have to pay for. All right. All right, let's see if there's another section we can pull off here. Nope, there's still parts attached. So let's actually really quickly, we'll just salvage these antennas. All right, we're running out of water. We're running out of oxygen, so we want to wrap this up really quickly. And then we're going to go back to the hub because we need oxygen again. So it's a constant going back to the hub for oxygen is now just part of your work cycle. So again, you want to focus on being efficient as possible. So I'm just going to give you about 20 more minutes of gameplay here so you can kind of see the rotation of going back, getting resources, going back, doing as much work as possible. All right, then we're going to get back into the interior of the ship as quickly as possible. Now that we have a very quick way to get in and out, because we've started taking the ship apart, that's going to increase how much work we can do on this trip. We want to constantly be increasing how much work we can do on each trip back and forth from the hub. Okay. All right, as you can see, all right, we got 5 more minutes on this shift. Let's try to get as much work done as we can. And then we'll actually end the video and pick it up next time. But again, we wanted to just focus on giving you a quick introduction on the game. And go through some of these tutorial items that really weren't clearly explained. So we got 5 more minutes. Let's see if we can find some more welding points to take out. Now another thing we can do actually is get to the reactor. Should be able to do that with the time we have left. Okay, sometimes you're able to actually open it, but in this case we cannot, so let's just go ahead and cut through this door. Alright, and that gets us to the reactor section. Just trying to do this quickly so we can see if we can at least get the reactor out with the time we have left. Right? Again, this is the section with the reactor. So like I said, you want to be careful with that. So one of the things you can do again, we can move it over. Like so. Keep our distance from it. Put it in a good trajectory. Then we're actually going to use a tether. Oh, am I out of tethers? Looks like I'm out of tethers. Oh no, I'm not. There we go. Right, so that way you can get the reactor out again without getting too close to the reactor. Then we just dissolve our tethers. Come on. All right, we're gonna have to come back tomorrow, next shift, and finish off the rest of the ship. As you can see, you have a limited time frame for each quote-unquote day. Typically, you can do three or four trips back to the hub and back. Now that will increase as you're able to, for example, increase your oxygen, increase the number of tethers you have available, etc., etc. Right, so we're going to end our shift for the day. And we didn't finish that ship, obviously, so there's lots more stuff to salvage. And we'll jump into that with our next video. Now that we've basically given you a tutorial on the first few steps of Shipbreaker. We'll see you next time. If you're watching this on YouTube, please check out our twitch.tv channel at Commando Gaming 1. And if you're watching this on Twitch, please check out our YouTube channels, which are Commando Gaming and Strategic Gaming. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.